An excerpt from Bonacorso Fidelibus's work, The Many Wars of the Early 25th Century, in the spring of 2401. There was a stirring in Tilea, although perhaps not what most rulers had expected. In the far north, contrary to the fearful concerns of many, Miragliano's vampire duke had been quiet. No shambling legions had yet spilled forth to spread the waking nightmare of undeath. Yet the fear he elicited had not lessened, as people felt foolish for supposing that the living dead would move quickly. Besides, it seemed likely that the wicked duke was strengthening his cold grip upon his realm, weeding out the living wherever they hid, and killing them in order to create even more servants. The vampire duke's nephew, Guglielmo Sforza, had fled Udolpho and successfully made his way to the city realm of Viadazza. He had no army, only a handful of servants, and but a few cards to play in the game of politics. Considering the vampire duke's continued rule of Miragliano, one might suppose Guglielmo was merely a pretender to his uncle's title. Many claimed, however, including the Church of More, that as Duke Alessandro was no longer alive, then the honour had already legally and fully passed on to his heir. This was the best card in the young noble's hand, besides the fact that many a ruler would be only too glad to have him do the fighting against such a terrible foe. Guglielmo had been made welcome in Viadazza, feasting with the city's great and good as an honoured guest of Lord Udolpho, where he petitioned all who would listen to aid him in the cleansing of Miragliano. Indeed, Lord Udolpho was amassing his not insignificant fleet, surely in light of the very real threat Miragliano presented. Whether or not he intended to take the war to the foe by sailing into Miragliano's harbour was another matter altogether, as such a fleet could be employed instead to supply or escape a besieged city. So it was that Archlector Callictus II of the Holy Church of More made the following proclamation, to be read throughout Tilea by every Morite cleric. Good people of Tilea, faithful servants of More and all the lawful gods, heed me, for I speak with the voice of More to deliver dire warnings. Dark days have come, as a power most vile and evil threatens every man, woman, and child in our lands. We know greenskins raid in the south. We know that the foul Ratto Uomo scuttle beneath us, forever sowing their poisonous corruptions. Yet these threats pale into insignificance compared to the wickedness now possessing the north. For there, in Miragliano, an evil has arisen which is beyond mere sinfulness, beyond violence and hate, but is a triple heresy. For it is an insult to Most Holy More, an insult to his holy church, and an insult to his people. It is a wickedness in direct opposition to More's will, a usurping of the church's rightful jurisdictions, and a terror to all in Tilea. Hundreds, thousands of souls belonging to More have been twisted and tortured to become unnaturally trapped in this realm, then made to kill the living, so that even more souls might be reaped. If this wickedness is allowed free rein, then all that is good will be destroyed, all that is ours, even our very souls, will be taken from us. Now is the time for the rulers of Tilea to accept their duty, and so do what is noble, just, and lawful, as well as entirely necessary. All those who can bear arms must march forth to cleanse the north of corruption. Let no prince be so unworthy as to shirk his duty. Let no council be so bickerous as to fail to act. Let no condottiere be so cowardly as to seek employment elsewhere. May all our prayers be to More, for it is he who must guide us and bless us in our endeavours. Let our cry be northwards, for it is there that the fate of those now living in Tilea will be decided. This was the letter heard by every God-fearing citizen throughout Tilea. Yet, as already revealed, the undead had so far been quiet. Rather, it was from the lands east of Miragliano that the news of war came. The great castle at Terme, guarding the road north to Rivola and so to the Nuvolonc Pass, had been taken and burned. Corpses floated down the river Iseo to become caught on the footings of the bridge at Urbino, and the sky above Usola was blackened by smoke. This was the work of an army of ogres led by a brute called Boulderguts, brought over the mountains by the returning wizard lord Niccolo of Campagrotta. They looted the castle of everything of worth, enslaved what few of the inhabitants they did not kill and eat, and then marched further north. Whether Duke Giacomo of Rivola could make a stand against this threat was yet to be seen. Some said that Lord Totto of the Arrabbiati Brotherhood must be laughing to see the fate of Giacomo's Bretonian knights, while others said he cried for the poor serfs killed by their masters' sides. The doubters simply raised their eyes and said that a man who isn't real can neither laugh nor cry. What the dwarfs of Carrickborgo thought of these events none could say, for no one was willing to risk travelling the iron road through Campagrotta now that the wizard lord Niccolo's tyranny had resumed. And it was not just outsiders who stirred trouble. Lord Polcario, son of Duke Guidobaldi, had captured the town of Astiano in a bold surprise attack. The Astianians had provoked Pavona's wrath by tolling all mercantile goods upon both road and river. Perhaps they believed that with the greenskin wag in the south, the Pavonans would not dare to strike at them. Not so. Blue and white army cut its way through the town's gate in a lightning assault, and so took Astiano with barely a man lost in the process. The realm of Pavona was growing, reaching westwards along the river Remo, and Lord Polcario's army was on the move yet again. Furthermore, Duke Guidobaldi had come to believe that the dwarven goldsmiths and moneylenders of Pavona had had a hand in encouraging Astiano's greedy boldness, and, as a consequence, he banished all dwarfs from his realm, conveniently decreeing their gold and goods to be forfeit. Then came reports of the sighting of a force of greenskins upon the hilly coast of Caratello. At first it was feared that another wag had landed, and that the southern city-states would soon be attacked from both flanks. But it transpired that these were Seaboss Skarbak's Green Corsairs, an infamous company of rovers who had served in several Sartosan fleets, and once as mercenaries in Viadaz's pay. It was commonly presumed that they were looking for employment, and that if they did not get it, then they would simply take whatever they could lay their hands upon. They were not the only company making enquiries, for the famous Compagnia del Sole's contract in the service of the Trentine Prince Girenzo was drawing to a close. Renewal negotiations were ongoing, but if they proved unfruitful, then this most famous company, a veritable army in itself, might soon find itself serving a new master. Meanwhile, the Duchess Maria Colleoni of Urbino, faced with a vampire lord to her west and a rampaging army of ogres to her east, was said to be reckoning up every scrap of gold and silver, even the copper pennies in her treasury, praying that she had enough to hire just such a force as the Compagnia, or merely enough to pay the first instalment necessary to seal a contract. In the far south, warlord Kernag's wag remained concentrated upon the western coast of the Bay of Rex, especially around the fortress town of Monte Castello. Nothing had been heard of Lord Roberto's garrison there for nearly a month, and no ships had returned from the castle. Those sailors who risked approaching the mouth of the bay reported that the greenskin fleet was grown much larger, and that fires were burning all around Monte Castello and along the hills stretching southwards. The beating of drums was heard, and the blaring of horns, both made somehow louder by the hours of darkness. One might say the first year of the century had been the quiet before the storm, a time of dark skies and heavy air. But this second year was when the first rumbles of thunder were heard as lightning began to flicker all around. And now, a story. Deliberations of one kind. Defence. Summer 2401. The walled city of Urbino. northern Tilea. I cannot understand why Lord Guglielmo rode past us upon his flight. Have I offended him? Does he believe Urbino is of no worth? Or are we so clearly doomed that he dare not visit us, never mind ask us for help, nor offer it to us? The Duchess Maria had been nursing this grievance ever since she heard of Guglielmo's passage. He was family. As the granddaughter of Duke Ludo Sforza, she was Guglielmo's first cousin. Her little city of Urbino was Miragliano's neighbour, and for many years enjoyed good relations. Lord Guglielmo had met the Duchess upon several occasions, fostering a friendly familiarity she had thought genuine. Yet he had fled from his vampiric uncle's terrible new rule, not to Urbino and her, but to Viadazza and Lord Adolfo, a beastly man known to have goblin blood in his veins. No one answered her immediately, which did not bode well. The dwarfs, both Captain Erginbrow of her Ironsides and her chief engineer Welleg, simply stared, as if the matter was so outside of their ken that an answer could not be expected from them. Captain Erginbrow was dressed, as always, in plate armour, his beard concealing the breastplate as it reached down to his belt. He wore no helm, but his bald pate was perfectly formed for such, as if it were crafted for a helm rather than the other way round. By his side, Welleg was hooded in grey cloth, and bore a huge iron-headed mallet that he obviously had not thought to lay down before attending the council. His fur-lined, green jerkin was decorated sparsely with iron studs, as if he had been lightly peppered with lead shot. He had the sort of bulbous nose many dwarfs were gifted with, and the flatness of the rest of his face was accentuated rather than diminished by a protruding bottom lip caused by his underbite. All in all, not the sort of face that promised wit and wisdom, yet he was rightly renowned for his skill with engines of war. Both men in the chamber were similarly silent. Her mercenary commander, Captain Ser Giorgio, wore the furrowed brow of a man wrestling with mental turmoil, while the Morite priest, Father Ramiro, was apparently engaged in silent prayer. Perhaps he was seeking enlightenment. "Well," asked the Duchess, "why did he not come?" Ser Giorgio cleared his throat. "We have sent a messenger to Viadazza to inquire of him what he intends, your grace, but as yet have received no answer." "I know about the message," said the Duchess, a note of exasperation in her tone, "and I know that no word has come back. In lieu of that, I would like your thoughts upon the matter." She presented quite a contrast to the armed and armoured soldiers in the chamber, as well as to the priest in his dark grey woollen robes and plain maroon cloth cap. Her light brown hair was fastened up in a complexly Riemann fashion, with a band of tight curls to frame her brow and bunched and hooped ringlets upon either side. Her dress was of green silk damask, edged at her low-cut neckline and sleeves with a fine white linen and lace point. She wore gold at her neck, wrist, and upon her breast. It was Father Ramiro who ventured an opinion first, gesturing dramatically as he so often did, this time presenting his arms as if he were weighing the matter in the air before him. "Your Grace, it may well be that Lord Guglielmo was not thinking clearly, neither acting sensibly nor in his best interests. To discover that one's uncle and liege lord has become so evilly corrupted as to embrace undeath, and that he intends to massacre his own people and plunge his entire realm into an unliving nightmare can be no easy thing. It seems to me that such would unhinge the very best of minds, certainly those not prepared by their faith in more to face such horrors." The Duchess was not convinced. She had the measure of Lord Guglielmo, and he had never given her reason to suspect he was weak. Quite the opposite. He appeared short of his nobility and purpose, and very much a natural-born leader of men. "A man so afeard would surely run to the nearest safe haven," she suggested. "If he did not come here, then perhaps he thinks Urbino is not safe. Perhaps he knows what his uncle intends next, and travels accordingly." "I reckon it's more likely his lordship could not come here," said the Ironside Captain Erginbrow. If he was chased from Miragliano by dead and deadly things, then he would go whichever way he could to escape. Sir Giorgio was nodding. We know the vampire duke's foul servants came close. The tracks we found proved the peasants' frightful reports were not false. Mounted men, or at least things that were once men. Perhaps they followed Lord Guglielmo, then turned aside. He pointed with his gauntleted hand at the large map laid upon the table. They were seen here, in the orchard, by the mill at Rucai, not far from the road, and here where the road fords the Valghetti. If they were pursuing him, then why would they turn aside? Asked the Duchess. Such creatures are not easily distracted from their purpose, nor the possessors of great initiative. If they were scouting my lands, then they were sent to do so. Lord Guglielmo may well have shaken them off with some trick, offered Sir Giorgio. Perhaps he led them along the road to give the impression he was heading here, and then cunningly crept off southwards. If that was so, said the Duchess, and his move towards us was merely a ruse, then it still leaves my question unanswered. The mood in the chamber was darkening, something the Duchess would not have thought possible, considering the peril they all faced. Perhaps her line of enquiry seemed desperate. Harping on about why Guglielmo had chosen not to come was hardly likely to lift her adviser's spirits, and besides, as no answer was forthcoming, it served no real purpose. She looked down at the map, tracing her finger along the line that marked the road. Well, it's all by the by. He did not come. We must of course consider what we can do, what we should do, not what he did not do. Sir Giorgio obviously took this as permission to say something that had been on his mind. By your leave, your grace, we could, considering how many good dwarfen folk dwell here within our walls, we could send to Barrack Borgo for aid. He turned to address the two dwarfs directly. Surely your brethren would be willing to help us against such a monstrous foe? To all but the engineer's surprise, Captain Erginbrow issued a snort of laughter. You are wrong, Commander. They may be distant kin, but they owe us nothing, neither love nor respect. They look upon us. Here he stopped, turned to bow to the Duchess, and said, No offence to you, your grace, nor to the good folk of this city, for I speak the Carrack Borgo dwarf's mind, and not my own. Then turning back to Sir Giorgio, he continued, They look upon us as no better than men, for no more reason than that we chose to live among you. They are proud to the point of folly, and they love only their own. And your grace, said the priest, Carrack Borgo is many leagues from here. Even if they were to send help, it would surely come too late. Then you believe the abomination will strike at us soon? Asked the Duchess. I fear so. That which Duke Alessandro has become will still possess his grace's living memories, and will revel in corrupting all that was once his, including those he once held dear, especially his kin. If his outriders have tried to count us, added the captain, then he must at the least be considering it. If they succeeded in their count, and who is to say where they crept in the darkest hours of the night, he will know we are not strong. But our defences, the moat, my Ironsides, your mercenaries, every able-bodied man we have practising drill, is this not strength? Urbino has never been strong in comparison to Miragliano, said the captain. Now that the Duke has fashioned an army from hell, summoning long-dead soldiers, it has become terrifying also. We can do all that we can to prepare, but we cannot stop men fearing the walking dead. How did you put it, Captain Erginbrow? Dead and deadly things. The Duchess untangled her delicately entwined fingers and placed her hands upon her hips. I shall stand with my brave soldiers, and if needs be, I shall perish in the defence of mine own. The men looked aghast, Father Ramiro almost tripping over his words to discourage her. Your Grace, there is no need for you to put yourself in danger. You have your soldiers to do that. If you were to die here, and your daughters also, then that would be another victory for the foe. But if you survive, there is hope for the future. For Tilea must surely come to its senses, heed our holy church's call to arms, and cleanse Miragliano, not the mountain dwarfs, but the faithful of Tilea. Captain Giorgio was keen to add his own discouragement. Your men will fight better knowing that you are safe, especially if they know you have gone for help. To face such horrors when their own noble mistress is in dire peril could only dishearten them. They would surely rather know that you are gathering allies to come to their aid. The Duchess was apparently not convinced. Our walls are strong. We have the Ironsides to stand immovable upon them, 2 full companies of crossbowmen to shoot from them, and more militia besides. Every wall has been blessed by the priests and brothers of More, with charms and wards to fend off evil magics. The moat is deep, and our storehouses replete with supplies, carefully gathered and rationed. More than this, the Shadow Lord Toto of the Arrabbiati has promised to come to our aid in our hour of need. If Guglielmo receives our plea, then he too must send help. What could he be doing in Viadazza but raising an army? I believe, said Captain Giorgio, that we can hold Urbino for some time, but not indefinitely. The enemy will not flinch from our quarrels, as mortal men would do. Their fallen will lie in heaps, even as those still standing calmly fill the moat with both faggots and the corpses of the truly dead to fashion a crossing. Then they will raise their ladders beneath torrents of boiling oil, oblivious to any burning pain. Oh, they will burn. Oil will do that, but they won't let that distract them. They will labour until they fall into pieces. Even those who do fall may well be raised again. Still, we can hold for some time while they work to overcome our walls. Such brave defence, however, would be a fruitless waste of effort unless a sufficiently strong and timely force came to relieve us, drive the foe away. So, you would have me run from Urbino during its greatest trial? Yes, Your Grace, I would, admitted Sir Giorgio, but because you could bring succour to Urbino during its greatest trial. The Duchess was still not entirely convinced. We have sent word to Guglielmo, promised pardons to the Arrabbiati, and the Church has preached throughout Tilea on our behalf. All these things will surely bring us the help we need. Captain Erginbrow harumphed, and all turned to look at him. Guglielmo passed us by. The Arrabbiati are like the mist that hides a thief, not the steel that arms a soldier. The Church can only preach. People must first listen, then believe, then decide, then act. You, Your Grace, can promise rewards. You can shame princes into doing what they know is right. You, Your Grace, will be Urbino standing there right afore them. You can hardly ignore us then.